Celia, I'm so happy to see you.
I'm so happy to see you.
Because we're going to talk about everything that happens to Mrs. Bruce in the new season of The Gilded Age. That's why we're here.
Oh, where do we start? Carrie Coon, come on out.
Although I do love that, and I'm very excited for it.
Same.
I'm even more thrilled that you are being honored at this year's Tonys. I like when you're honored at the Tonys even with a nomination or a win, which happened in 2019, which was fantastic. You've come down from that.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Well, you had a whole pandemic, and
That's right.
you had a lot of
a
life.
few things happened.
Yeah. But you were nominated last year for Mother Play, which is beautiful. And this year, this is very special. This is, I'm sure, not something you saw coming.
No.
The Isabelle Stevenson Award for advocacy through the arts. And it's for artists who have done great work for the world outside of what they've done for Broadway audiences. How did you feel when you got the call or the email or the reach out about this?
I mean, I will be honest. I got asked to like hop on a Zoom, which I was like, no, thank you. I don't want to do that. And they were like, you know, it'll be quick. And I was like, what is this? And David Stone, who was the producer of Spelling Bee, was like, I just wanted to tell you that this year we're going to give you the Isabelle Stevenson Tony Award. And I just like was like, what? And like burst into tears. And I think it was partially, it was such a surprise, but it also just felt like it just really immediately felt much bigger than me. And I think there is something, you know, I wanted that Tony Award so badly for a performance, and I never, ever imagined this. And I think, so both the surprise, but also this kind of recognition, I think is such a huge part of my life. And I don't think I ever imagined that there would be a Tony Award in my future for it.
It's interesting because when you look at even the press release announcing that they were giving this to you, you've done a lot. And I think a lot of why it wasn't necessarily maybe on your list of things to even think about is that this is just, I feel like this is just in your DNA. This is just who you are as a person.
Yes, like it came with me.
Yeah.
That I think it's like something that's very lucky that I grew up in a family that was so dedicated to service.
Susan and Rory.
That's right. They were always public servants, taking us to protests, working at soup kitchens. Like it was so, it makes it so much easier, I think, when you're introduced to it at a young age to feel like, oh, this is just another thing that we always do. And that then to be a part of a community. I mean, I even think back to like in college that it just felt intuitive to do this sort of work. But I think what really is so moving to me about the fact that the Tony Awards are recognizing me is that when I look at the list of Isabelle Stevenson Tony Award winners, it's like Larry Kramer, it's it's Billy Porter. Like these are people, Phyllis Newman, like who have either raised millions of dollars for an organization or have started an organization themselves. Like that it's like massive work. And I feel like what I have been doing is community care. Like it's so basic and it's kind of all over the place. That was one thing that they said on the Zoom. They were like, we're not sure how to characterize your work because it's a little all over the place. And I was like, correct, that I think, but I also feel like it's so nice that they saw it, because I actually think if I was a young person watching the Tonys at home, watching somebody receive the Isabelle Stevenson Award for, you know, raising $3 million, I would think like, well, I don't know that I can ever do that.
Right, how do I do that?
Whereas I hope if they see me, and the fact that I'm sort of still in the middle of my life instead of at the end, I felt that way last year with Billy, that I was like, this is so inspiring, but that there will be people at home and inside of our community that are like, it's actually not as big a lift as it sometimes feels. And that they were willing to recognize that it's just these like small acts that I've done sustained over, 25 years. I'm just so moved.
It's easy to sort of feel it in your heart to want to do things, but to actually take action and to find time in your life, right? And not binge every Netflix series, but actually maybe put some of your time out of work to give back, right? I mean, how do you sort of tell people? How do you, I'm sure people talk to you about it all the time when they find out. I remember during the pandemic, very early in the pandemic, doing an interview with you with Gideon Glick.
Yes.
To talk about Broadway for Bellevue. And it was like, and I remember saying, well, of course you're doing something. We're all trying to figure out which way we're going, but you're trying to figure out how to get food to the healthcare workers who are putting extra time in.
Yeah, and that was so, I think I talked about this. It was just so personal because Gideon's partner was a doctor.
Yeah.
And I was like, what is happening to them? Like, what is this like? And I think the truth is, I don't think I would have done it on my own. Like, the main piece of advice I can give is like, get yourself some friends. Like Gavin Creel was that for me for years. Gideon Glick has been that. Sheena Taub is that. Like, there are these people that just make it easier and more fun, and you have different strengths. So you can say like, I'll take care of this part of it and you take care of this part, and you have accountability, and it's just like an excuse to be with your people. I was just like listening to an interview that said, you know, human beings are so impressionable, and if like they were talking about like a high school, and they were like, if the coolest kids in the high school grade go and like build a house for the weekend, suddenly everybody's like, yeah, that's what we're doing. Like, we're building houses. And it's just like that power is real. And that if you can just find a couple other like-minded people, you don't have to do it by yourself. And the other thing I think is like, you have to actually care about it. Like, I've tried a few things where I'm like, I'm gonna get involved in this. And I was like, you know, this just does not give me the spark. And so I think in order also to like follow through with something, you do have to feel like, I really want to work on behalf of this. Like, I think that Obama election, when I saw him speak at John Kerry's DNC, I was like, that guy is for me. Like, I want to be beside that guy. And like, working in that, like, I lived in Pennsylvania and like ran an office there. And the day that he won, like, I will never forget, like, driving on the highway, just sobbing much harder than when I won the Tony, when I opened a Broadway show. Like, it was, because I think the thing about service or helping is that the return on the investment is great. Like, whatever time you have to put aside, whatever like exhaustion you feel inside of it, I do think the return is like, it's selfish, that it makes me feel good.
You actually made your Broadway debut like exactly 20 years ago. The opening of Spelling Bee was, which is crazy. Happy anniversary.
Hey, thanks.
So you've had this very rich career on stage and on screen and in doing all kinds of things, but do you find that one feeds the other? I mean, do you find in your life, I feel like, and you have a family and you have a 10-year-old and a wonderful husband. So I feel like you're balancing a lot of things.
Yeah. I think my husband would tell you that I am overextended. And I think I would tell you that I'm overextended. I mean, I think there is this gift of feeling like there's always more to do, particularly for the world. But I think in my life, I'm just, and again, like, that is something that came with me. That's not something I have nurtured. That's not, I think we all operate at different frequencies. And it's like, I think if you are a person who is like a slower processor, who finds more comfort at home than out in the world, like, that is how you are meant to be. And you can't push yourself beyond that place. But there is still work that you can do from the comfort of your own home. I mean, I think that's also, I think about this a lot when people are dying, or like when there's like a real illness and there's this question of like, what can I do? And I remember reading once that you shouldn't ask the people that are sort of at the top, like, what can I do? But you should ask yourself, what can I do? Like, what is something that doesn't cost me too much, that is in my, like, world of resources? During these times in particular, things are so hard, and that I think despair and cynicism are, like, to me, the easiest thing to access.
Yeah.
And that any small gesture is so insufficient that it's just not worth doing it at all. And I think what I'm learning is that when you show up, all you have to do is show up. It actually makes you feel a little bit better. So again, it goes to this, like, idea of, like, return on investment, which is that you're doing something that's good for the world, but also you can, like, wake up feeling a little bit better. And I think what I also just value so much about, I think not just the New York theater community, I think this is true about communities across the country, is that so much of my function in the community has just been telling people where to go. Like, that I'm not building a lot of things. I'm just saying, I see this hole that needs to be filled, and I say, if people don't mind showing up here, we can work together to try to, like, fix this. And always, it's just the outpouring of energy and support is enormous. So I think it's like, it's understanding, like, am I a person that wants to tell people where they need to go, or am I a person that wants to wait for the directive and show up? And I think that that's also been a, like, part of my learning process in all of this.
I feel like that's always been said about the theater community. They show up for these things, which is why this award is so wonderful.
Yes.
It's so great that they do this now.
Yes, truly.
Yeah. I believe back at the University of Michigan, you met what I would call probably your partner in advocacy, or your advocacy soulmate, or I don't know how you would describe it. Beautiful friendship with Gavin Creel.
Yes.
And you did a lot of these things with Gavin.
Yes.
And it seemed like it's sort of, when you met, you obviously were coming from your Susan and Rory upbringing.
And he had Jim and Nancy, which they were they were different, but they were aligned in, like, principles of service.
Yeah. And then and I know you lived with him when you first got to New York. Did you see that in each other right away? And when did that first sort of spark?
That's such a good question. I think the spring that I was cast in Pippin, that he directed, we
as
had
Catherine,
like, as role. Catherine, thank you. Thanks, Gavin. It was like, we like took a break during spring break that year. I hope I'm saying this right. And that year for spring break, I did something called alternative spring break and went to Texas and worked with United Farm Workers. And he was like, wait, what? What? And he said, I think this is also just, like, something about growing up in a secular society. And I'm not really looking to, like, be part of an organized religion, but I do think something that he would say is that so much of his service background came from the church, that his parents, like, were really involved with the church in order to be of service, which was the same with my grandparents, is that they volunteered every Sunday, that the church was like this place that they could go to understand what needed doing. And that he was like, it kind of feels like the theater could do that too. And we were like, yeah. And so I think once he started, when we were living together, we went to, like, some John Kerry fundraisers together, and would just try to, like, travel together to be like, there's, like, numbers are helpful. And then when he started Broadway Impact with Jenny Canellis and Rory O'Malley, I was so inspired by, like, what they were doing, and was just like, you tell me whatever I can do to be helpful. And I just think, like, these co-conspirators, like, it really, because then I would push him, I could ask questions that I was like, I think you think because you have done all this work in this, like, it was particularly in the world of state legislatures, that I was like, I need more help understanding what you're talking about. And he was like, that's good, that's helpful. Right. And similarly, he would do the same. But I think, the thing about Gavin is that he was the ultimate cheerleader for anybody
Yeah.
and anything. And so having somebody that I would say, like, I'm thinking about ... it would always be like, you have to do that. You have to do that.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'll say about Gavin, like, that I really learned over the years is, like, sometimes saying, like, I want to do this, I want to make this happen, makes you feel like if it doesn't happen, you're some sort of failure. And that he was always giving voice to the things that he wanted to do in the world. And I think that sometimes saying it out loud and saying it to the right people, like, all you sometimes have to do is, like, say the thing, and it will launch many other parts of it.
Yeah.
That instead of just, like, holding it for yourself and being like, God, I never did that thing. And sometimes they don't happen. I mean, I think that was what was so beautiful about watching him do that, is that there are plenty of things that he was like, I'm going to do this, I want to do this. And then it was like, no, that wasn't meant to be. But that he didn't lose anything by saying it out loud. And it really inspired me, I think, to do the same.
Yeah. Gavin definitely would have been on the list of Isabelle Stevenson Award recipients.
I mean, I think I said this in, like, a social media post, but it's like, I wouldn't be getting this award if it wasn't for him. Like, both because I feel like he pushed me in my advocacy so much, but also because I do think, like, his death was so transformative in a way for our community. And it was like, what were the chances that 2 years before he died, I was going to do this crazy training that would then, like, help me, help him, and then help us try to process, like, what happened.
So you're trained as an end-of-life doula. And I was so blown away when I learned that you ended up being Gavin's end-of-life doula. And how do you see that work as tying into this sort of larger discussion of your advocacy, and what made you get into it?
I mean, this is a great example of something that, like, during the pandemic, I kept hearing about for the first time. When I was pregnant, I heard about birth doulas, that they were like, they'll help women, you know, have, like, better deliveries. And I was like, and you learn so much when you're pregnant about, like, the stages of labor. So this is what you should expect. The whole family, if you're going to have people in the room, like, you can sort of depend. Every woman's birth is different, but there are these things that are dependable about the stages of bringing life into the world. And it turns out death is the same way, that it's like everybody's death is different, but there are these stages. If you are someone with a terminally ill diagnosis, then you can also see the ways that things are progressing so that it's not a huge surprise, so that everybody can be on the same page and feel like we're navigating this together instead of, you know, siloed. And I think this goes back to community care, that I just think death is, like, the only thing in this whole life that we can depend on. Like, it is gonna be there no matter what. And our culture is just really not in a place that it's like, I mean, I think we've actually come a little further maybe since the pandemic, but it's a hard thing to wrap your arms around. Nobody wants to think about it.
Yeah.
And I think Gavin, again, he was always, he would talk about, there's something called Death Over Dinner, where you have friends over and it's like a website, and they have prompts for you to talk about, like, what are the things that I want for my death, or for life. I mean, I think that's the other part of that training, was that when you spend, I mean, it was like a month that they just kept asking us to return to, like, this idea that we're going to die, and how do we want to be remembered? And I think it's easy, particularly when you're an artist and when you are in a capitalist society, that you're just like, more, I want more. And it's like, more of what exactly? Like, and more for what?
Right.
And I think having this thing in the back of your head that's like, you know, my time is limited. And I think what was also so profound about Gavin's life is that what he accomplished in 48 years was, like, astounding.
Yeah.
And that he really was I think, in alignment with how he wanted to be remembered. It's one of those things that is like any muscle, and the more you think about it, the more it helps sort of clarify the way that you're living your life.
During your beautiful eulogy at Gavin's memorial, it was just stunning, honestly, beautiful words. But I learned that as an end-of-life doula, that one of the big things is to ask people if they have regrets. And you shared that Gavin said, "I don't have any regrets, I just wish I had more time." And I thought about that because you've now being honored in mid-career, as you talked about with this, and you have a lot more time. So how do you look at knowing that you have this award that's sort of giving, do you see it as like an inspiration, and how do you want to spend your time? When you look at the time you have, what do you think about?
I think it's such a good question. I mean, I think it's so, like I said, it really is so meaningful to me that I'm the age that I am, and that I feel like there is still so much that I want to do. And I think the truth is, like, for the next 8 years, I bet I'm gonna try to be the best mom that I can be while my son is still like living in our house.
Right.
And I'm gonna really care about like equity and diversity and inclusion at his school. And I'm gonna really care about the mayoral election that's coming up this November. And that I was like, that feels to me like possible and small enough that I can actually affect a little bit of change. And then I look at someone like Judy Kuhn. Judy and I have a like a giving circle where we raise money for state legislatures, and carrying on Gavin's legacy of caring about the states. And I see her daughter is 30 now, and she is so in the world in a way that I'm like, God, it will be, and and she works all the time too, but I think similarly, like, she's actually a real hero of mine in terms of like this balance of, I think her life is so rich and her advocacy and work is so rich, and she's this incredible performer.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for the time, like, it's making me think of the last protest that I went to. There were so many elders, like people with walkers, people in wheelchairs. And I was like, they're not even gonna be here to know what happens. And like, what kind of selflessness does it require to show up and walk down Fifth Avenue for like 30 blocks when you're not even necessarily gonna be there to reap the benefits? And it's like, that is the kind of thing, I think, both looking to the elders and also like the young people, I am so inspired by them. And if anything, it's like, I want to draw in and understand more about where young people in the country are like feeling, because I do think they are so on top of so much, and also understandably they're worried. And it's like, how can I help inspire them, but also learn from them and like understand what needs doing? I mean, I think that's the other part of this award, is that I feel like so many people in our community, there are so many organizations. I am just one of many, and I don't say that to diminish myself. It's just the truth that like there really are so many helpers. And it's like, on one hand, I'm just like, just keep being a helper. Like whatever that means, be somebody that's just trying to do a little bit extra to help.
Well, I think it's very inspiring that, like you said, I think that people will find inspiration from sort of the constant, it's like what you're working on is just what you're dealing with, year to year, moment to moment. And I, for one, am thrilled that you're in this community and in this world.
I feel there is like very little, it's gonna make me cry. Like, I'm so I love this community so much, and I feel so lucky to be a part of it. And I feel like all I want is for other people to get to feel the way that I do inside of it. And I do think a part of why I feel so integral to it and like I matter is because of this work. And so if that's any nudge for people who are looking for belonging and community, like I do think that service is a direct path to that feeling a part of something.
We've heard a lot over the years of hearing you talk about your work, and we've heard a lot about your mom and losing your mom at a young age. Can you imagine if she got to see this?
I know my mom was a twin, and her twin sister emailed me and she was like, of all the things that your mom would have been proud of, this is the thing that I think would have moved her the most. And it's like, I just, in a beautiful way, I think there was a time when I was like, I don't know, how so sad that she's not here. And I think something about Gavin dying and he was so spiritually evolved that I'm like, part of why this happened is because of her, is because of him. Like there's a larger thing that I don't understand, but that I do believe in. And that's comforting.
Believe it enough for
all of us.
Yeah. Yeah. Finally, you get to go to the Tonys and get all glam and look fabulous without having to worry about whether or not you're winning. You get to like show up knowing you're giving a speech. It's like guaranteed.
I've always said, I think I said this to you last year, I was like, the greatest thing is to go to the Tonys when you know you're not going to win. And now I'm going to amend it. The greatest thing is to go to the Tonys and know you're going to win. Because the years when you're like, I might win, those are harder.
Yeah.
I found that harder. But this feels like, and I'm also just like, it's going to be so interesting because I feel like you're such a part of the year that you're nominated with. And I'm just like a fan.
Yeah.
I've just like seen all of these shows instead of being like a participant in it. So that's going to also be so different. I can't wait. I can't wait.
So you're just going to be a little young Celia fangirl with all the stars.
I loved you in that show. That's what it's going to be like.
Touching your special Tony. I love it.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I adore you.
Of course.